Chapter 4 of Dot and the Kangaroo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. Dot and the Kangaroo by Ethel C. Pedley. Chapter 4. "Goodbye, Kookaburra," cried Dot, as they left the cave, and the bird gave her a nod of the head, followed by a wink, which was supposed to mean hearty goodwill at parting. He would have spoken, only he had swallowed but part of the snake, and the rest hung out the side of his beak, like an old man's pipe, so he couldn't speak. It wouldn't have been polite to do so with his beak full. Dot was so rested by her sleep all night that she did not ride in the kangaroo's pouch, but they proceeded together, she walking, and her friend making as small hops as she could, so as not to get too far ahead. This was very difficult for the kangaroo, because even the smallest hops carried her far in front. After a time they arranged that the friendly animal should hop a few yards, then wait for Dot to catch her up, and then go on again. This she did, nibbling bits of grass as she waited, or playing a little game of hide-and-seek behind the bushes. Sometimes when she hid like this, Dot would be afraid that she had lost her kangaroo, and would run here and there, hunting round trees and clusters of ferns, until she felt quite certain she had lost the kind animal, when suddenly, clean over a big bush, the kangaroo would bound into view, landing right in front of her. Then Dot would laugh and rush forward and throw her arms around her friend, and the kangaroo, with a quiet smile, would rub her little head against Dot's curls, and they were both very happy. So, although it was a long and rough way to the little creek where the platypus lived, it did not seem at all far. The stream ran at the bottom of a deep gully that had high rocky sides, with strangely shaped trees growing between the rocks, but by the stream Dot thought they must be in fairyland, it was so beautiful. In the dark hollows of the rocks were wonderful ferns, such delicate ones that the little girl was afraid to touch them. They were so tender and green that they could only grow far away from the sun, and as she peeped into the hollows and caves where they grew, it seemed as if she was being shown the secret storehouse of nature, where she kept all the most lovely plants out of sight of the world. A soft carpet seemed to spring under Dot's feet, like a nice springy mattress, as she trotted along. She asked the kangaroo why the earth was so soft, and was told that it was not earth, but the dead leaves of the tree ferns above them, that had been falling for such a long, long time that no kangaroo could remember the beginning. Then Dot looked up, and saw that there was no sky to be seen, for they were passing under a forest of tree ferns, and their lovely spreading fronds made a perfect green tent over their heads. The sunlight that came through was green, as if you were in a house made of green glass. All upon the slender stems of these tall tree ferns were the most beautiful little plants, and many stems were twined, from the earth to their feather-like fronds, with tender creeping ferns, the fronds of which were so fine and close that it seemed as if the tree fern were wrapped up in a lovely little fern coat. Even crumbling dead trees and decaying tree ferns did not look dead, because some beautiful moss or lichen or little ferns had clung to them, and made them more beautiful than when alive. Dot kept crying out with pleasure at all she saw, especially when little parakeets, with feathers as green as the ferns, and gorgeous red breasts, came in flocks, and welcomed her to their favourite haunt. And, as she had eaten the berries of understanding, and was the friend of the kangaroo, they were not frightened, but perched on her shoulders and hands, and chatted their merry talk together. The kangaroo did not share Dot's enthusiasm for the beauties of the gully. She said it was pretty certainly, but a bad place for kangaroos, because there was no grass. For her part, she didn't think any sight in nature so lovely as a big plain green with the little blades of new spring grass. The gully was very showy, but not to her mind so beautiful as the other. Then they came to a stream that gurgled melodiously as it rippled over stones in its shallow course, or crept round big grey boulders that were wrapped in thick mosses, in which were mingled flowers of the pink and red wild fuchsia, or the creamy great blossoms of the rock lily. Dot ran down the stream with bare feet, laughing as she paddled in and out among the rocks and ferns, and the sun shone down on the gleaming foam of the water, and made golden lights in Dot's wild curls. The kangaroo too was very merry, and bounded from rock to rock over the stream, showing what wonderful things she could do in that way, and sometimes they paused, side by side, and peeped down upon some small pool that showed their two reflections as in a mirror, and that seemed so funny to Dot that her silvery laugh woke the silence in happy peals, until more green and red parakeets flew out of the bush to join in the fun. When they had followed the stream some distance, the gully opened out into bush scrub. The little parakeets then said "Good-bye," and flew back to their favourite tree ferns and bush growth. And the kangaroo said that as they were nearing the home of the platypus, they must not play in the stream any more. To do so might warn the creature of their approach and frighten it. "We shall have to be very careful," she said, "so that the platypus will neither hear nor smell you. We will therefore walk on the opposite shore, as the wind will then blow away from its home." The stream no longer chattered over rocky beds, but slid between soft banks of earth, under tufts of tall rushes, grasses, and ferns, and soon it opened into a broad pool, which was as smooth as glass. The clouds in the sky, the tall surrounding trees, and the graceful ferns and rushes of the banks, were all reflected in the water, so that it looked to Dot like a strange upside-down picture. This, then, was the home of that wonderful animal, and Dot felt quite frightened, because she thought she was going to see something terrible. At the kangaroo's bidding, she hid a little way from the edge of the pool, but she was able to see all that happened. The kangaroo evidently did not enjoy the prospect of conversing with the platypus. She kept on fidgeting about, putting off calling to the platypus by one excuse and another. She was decidedly ill at ease. "Are you frightened of the platypus?" asked Dot. "Dear me, no," replied the kangaroo. "But I'd rather have a talk with any other bush creature. First of all, the sight of it makes me so uncomfortable that I want to hop away the instant I set eyes upon it. Then, too, it's so difficult to be polite to the platypus, because one never knows how to behave towards it. If you treat it as an animal, you offend its bird nature, and if you treat it as a bird, the animal in it is mighty indignant. One never knows where one is with a creature that is two creatures," said the kangaroo. Dot was so sorry for the perplexity of her friend that she suggested that they should not consult the platypus, but the kangaroo said it must be done, because no one in the bush was so learned. Being such a strange creature, and living in such seclusion, and being so difficult to approach, was a proof that it was the right adviser to seek. So, with a half desperate air, the kangaroo left the little girl and went down to the water's edge. Pausing a moment, she made a strange little noise, that was something between a grunt and a hiss, and she repeated this many times. At last Dot saw what looked like a bit of black stick, just above the surface of the pool,